The streetlights flickered as she crouched behind the battered concrete pillar, her breath shallow and rapid. A single shard of glass caught the dim glow, reflecting a fractured world she was desperate to escape. In that fleeting moment, she felt the weight of the city pressing in, its unspoken rules, its watchful eyes. No one else seemed to notice her presence, but she knew better. The faint hum of footsteps approached, deliberate and measured, and her heart kicked into overdrive. She pressed her palm against her side, feeling the rough fabric of her jacket, clutching something small and fragile, her only insurance against the chaos waiting just beyond the shadows. She was an outsider here, out of place even in the dim safety of the night. Her clothes were too clean, her posture too stiff, but her eyes betrayed her, sharp, calculating. She had a purpose, one that didn't align with the city's silent code. Something hidden beneath her coat, something worth risking everything. The distant clang of a closing door echoed, and she instinctively glanced sideways, catching sight of a figure lingering at the edge of her vision, a tall silhouette with a rigid stance, eyes scanning, always watching. The kind of watcher who never blinked, never missed a detail. Suddenly, she took a half-step forward, her hand brushing against the cool metal of her concealed item. A seemingly small decision, yet it tilted her fragile balance. She knew the risk, the wrong move, and the system would tighten around her like a noose. Still, her fingers tightened, and she moved with purpose, as if the outcome was already sealed. Behind her, a stray glance from a nearby pedestrian almost revealed her secret, but she held her breath and pressed on. Meanwhile, a woman nearby, perhaps a vendor or a fellow stray, noticed her hesitation. Their eyes briefly met, an unspoken understanding passing between them, a shared recognition of the stakes. The woman's gaze lingered just a moment longer, offering a subtle nod, a fragile tether in a world that thrived on silence and suspicion. That brief connection felt like a lifeline, a tiny act of kindness amid the darkness. If only she could whisper her thanks, she'd ask for a moment of calm, but words would betray her. Instead, she allowed her eyes to flick toward the silhouette once more, catching the faintest movement, a shadow shifting, a silent threat lurking just beyond reach. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move, or perhaps for the unseen force that watched her to make its own. As she straightened slightly, her gaze darted to the faint glow of a distant street lamp, her signal, her silent cue. And just as she was about to step out from behind her cover, she sensed it, the faint, almost imperceptible presence of a watcher, a reminder that she was never truly alone in this game. The night stretched ahead, full of unseen dangers, and she knew her story was only just beginning. The alley grew darker as a tall figure emerged from the shadows, every step deliberate and heavy. His face was sharp and cold, eyes like icy blades that seemed to cut through the dim light. He carried himself with a cruel arrogance, shoulders squared, chest pushed forward as if he owned the night itself. He paused when he saw her crouched behind the pillar, a slow, wicked smile curling his lips. His voice, when he spoke, was low but laced with venom. "Thought you could hide, little thief." His tone was mocking, dismissive, as if her presence was nothing more than a nuisance. Without hesitation, he took a step closer, towering over her, eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up prey. She flinched, clutching her small bundle tighter, but he didn't notice. Instead, he sneered. "You're wasting your time. No one cares about the street trash like you." His words dripped with contempt, each syllable sharper than the last. She tried to speak, to plead, but her voice caught in her throat. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with brutal strength, forcing her to straighten. His grip was tight, unforgiving, and she winced. "What's this? You think you're clever, sneaking around with that thing? You're nothing but a rat, trying to steal what's not yours." His face twisted into a cruel sneer, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The crowd around them, indifferent or too afraid to intervene, watched in silence. No one moved to help her, no one challenged his authority. The alley's silence was thick, oppressive. She whimpered softly, desperately trying to pull away, but he held her firm. "You're lucky I don't throw you into the gutter where you belong," he spat, voice rising slightly. His free hand slapped her face, the slap echoing harshly in the still night. She staggered back, tears welling in her eyes, her cheeks stinging from both the slap and humiliation. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "I didn't." "You didn't what?" he interrupted, voice cold and cruel. "Steal. Lie. Try to survive. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." His laughter, sharp and merciless, echoed against the brick walls. She sank to her knees, trembling, clutching her small bundle as if it was her last shield. Her face was streaked with tears, cheeks red from the slap, her body trembling with helplessness. The crowd's eyes bore into her, their silence deafening. No one dared to challenge him, no one dared to stand up. And yet, his cruelty didn't stop there. He kicked at her side, hard, as if trying to push her further into despair. "Get out of here," he spat, voice rising in a cruel crescendo. "And don't come back. Ever." He turned on his heel, heels clicking sharply on the cobblestones, his mocking laugh fading into the night. She cradled her face, trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to gather herself. Her small bundle slipped from her grasp, spilling out into the dirt. The cruel man's shadow receded, leaving her broken and exposed in the darkness, a silent witness to her suffering. A few feet away, a woman watched, eyes wide with horror, but she said nothing. The crowd remained still, unmoved by the scene of torment. The night pressed in tighter, the cruel laughter lingering even after he had gone. Her shoulders shook as she fought to hold herself together, knowing that the world had just shown her how little it cared. The cold reality settled over her like a shroud, she was completely alone. From the shadows of a nearby doorway, a figure watched silently, eyes fixed on the scene unfolding in the alley. At first, the observer seemed to hesitate, almost unsure if what they saw was real. A woman, perhaps middle-aged, with a worn face and tired eyes, crossed her arms tightly. Her gaze lingered on the trembling girl on her knees, tears streaking her cheeks, body curled inward as if trying to shrink away from the world. The cruel man's voice echoed sharply, each word a dagger, and yet the observer's eyes widened in disbelief. How could anyone be so merciless? Her heart clenched painfully, but she remained rooted, hesitant to step closer. The crowd's indifference frustrated her, no one moved, no one spoke, as if the scene was nothing more than a passing shadow. But she saw the small trembling hands, the way the girl's shoulders shook uncontrollably, and the way her face was streaked with tears that refused to stop. Her stomach twisted with a mixture of anger and helplessness. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Is this really happening?" Her voice was barely audible, her eyes flickering between the girl and the man who continued to mock her cruelty. Why would someone treat them like this? She clenched her jaw, fighting the urge to intervene, to shout out or run forward. But her feet felt glued to the ground, her mind torn between action and caution. She noticed the way the girl's small bundle had fallen into the dirt, the way her trembling hands clutched at nothing, as if grasping at some invisible thread of hope. The man's cruel laughter still echoed in the alley, sharp and relentless, as he turned away, his footsteps heavy and dismissive. Still, the observer's eyes lingered on the victim, who now looked more fragile than ever. Tears continued to stream down her face, her body trembling uncontrollably, shoulders hunched as if trying to shield herself from the world's coldness. The crowd's silence was deafening, the indifference of those passing by primal and unsettling. No one offered a hand, no voice called out. The observer's chest tightened with a rising sense of dread. She wondered if anyone had ever seen her like this, so broken, so humiliated, and done nothing. Her fists clenched, and she hesitated, her mind racing with questions. Could she stay silent? Should she step forward? Her own heart pounded in her chest, a faint voice whispering, "You could do something, but what?" What could she say? What could she do? Still, her eyes refused to turn away from the girl's suffering. She saw the way her trembling lips moved, trying to form words that wouldn't come, and felt an ache deep within her chest. The cruelty, so clear and raw, left her feeling small, powerless, yet undeniably disturbed. As she watched, her gaze drifted to the distant shadows where the man had disappeared, his cruel presence lingering like a stain on the night. The girl's trembling reached a new level, her shoulders hitching as silent tears continued to fall. Her breath was ragged, her small frame shivering with despair. The observer's hand unconsciously moved to her heart, as if to steady herself. This isn't right, she thought. This can't be allowed to go on, yet still, she waited, caught in a web of doubt and hesitation. The scene stretched on, the girl's suffering unresolved, the cruelty unchallenged. And somewhere deep within, a spark of something, hope, courage, began to flicker, faint but undeniable. The moment was fragile, hanging by a thread, and the observer knew that soon, everything could change. But for now, she remained on the edge, watching, waiting for the right moment to step into the darkness. Suddenly, a voice shattered the stillness like a lightning strike. Enough, it roared, loud and commanding, echoing through the alley with force that made even the shadows recoil. The woman who had been silently watching stepped forward, her eyes blazing, fists clenched tightly at her sides. Without hesitation, she threw herself between the girl and the cruel man, standing tall despite the chaos around her. Her voice trembled with fury and resolve. "Leave her alone." The man froze, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face her. His sneer deepened, arrogance radiating from every line of his face. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, sneering. "This is none of your business." She didn't flinch. "It is now," she shot back, voice steady but fierce. "You've gone too far." The crowd's silence thickened, eyes darting between the two, some in shock, others uncertain. The girl looked up, eyes wide and trembling, unsure whether to be grateful or afraid. Her body instinctively curled slightly, as if expecting another blow. The man's jaw tightened, anger flickering behind his cold eyes. "Get out of my way," he barked, raising a fist as if to intimidate. But she didn't move. Her stance was firm, unwavering. "Not this time," she said, voice rising. "You're not going to hurt her anymore." His face twisted with contempt. "You think you can stop me? You're just a nobody." His laugh was harsh, dismissive, as if her words were a joke. "You're wasting your time." She stepped closer, her voice cutting through the air. "I don't care who you are. Leave her alone. Now." The girl flinched again, clutching her trembling hands to her chest, eyes pleading silently. The man's eyes flickered with fury, then mockery. "And what if I don't?" he sneered. "You think you can tell me what to do?" His voice was venomous, dangerous. He took a step forward, fists clenched, looming over her. But she held her ground, her voice unwavering. "Yes. I do." The crowd shifted, some muttering, others watching in stunned silence. The tension sizzled in the air, thick with anticipation. The man's eyes flashed with rage, but he hesitated, caught off guard by her boldness. The girl's trembling slowed just slightly, her breathing ragged, eyes darting from her rescuer to the man. She had never been defended like this before. The woman's heart pounded, her muscles tense, ready for whatever might come next. She refused to back down. The man's jaw clenched tighter, and for a moment, he seemed to weigh his options. Then, with a sneer, he spat on the ground. "This isn't over," he hissed, voice venomous. "Next time, I won't be so nice." He pushed past her roughly, shoulders shaking with anger, then disappeared into the shadows with a bitter laugh. The silence returned, heavier than before. The woman slowly turned to look at the girl, whose face was streaked with tears, mouth trembling. She reached out carefully, not touching her, but offering a silent gesture of comfort. The girl's eyes flicked up, filled with a mix of shock and relief, unsure whether to trust or fear her protector. Around them, the crowd remained frozen, some in awe, others in discomfort, unsure whether to cheer or retreat. The woman's heart hammered in her chest, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She had done something that might change everything. Yet, in her mind, she knew this was only the beginning. The battle for justice was just heating up, and the darkness that had cast its shadow still lingered. She took a breath, steadying herself, and prepared for whatever might come next. The alley's air was thick with unspoken promise, a fragile hope hanging in the balance. The woman who had intervened stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she confronted the man. "Who are you really? Why are you doing this?" Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded fiercely. The man's face flickered with a flash of panic, then quickly hardened. "You don't understand," he spat, trying to brush her off. "This isn't your concern." But the crowd had grown quiet, tense with anticipation. A figure nearby, a middle-aged man with a worn face and trembling hands, hesitated, then spoke softly. "She's lying," he whispered, voice trembling. "He's not who he says he is." The woman looked at him sharply. "What do you mean? Who is he?" The man looked down, eyes darting away. "He's been hiding something. I saw him," his voice cracked, fear evident in his eyes. "He's been hurting her." The girl. The girl's trembling lips parted slightly, eyes wide with shock. I didn't want to say," she whispered, voice fragile. "It's my father." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. The woman stared at her, stunned. "Your father? Is that true?" The girl nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't know what to do. He's been," her voice broke. The man's face twisted, now visibly nervous, sweat beading along his forehead. "That's not true," he snapped, voice rising. "You're lying. I never hurt her." But his eyes darted nervously, darting away from everyone's gaze. "You're making this up," he added, voice strained. The woman pressed further. "Why? Why would you do this? What have you been hiding?" She looked at the man, searching for answers. "Tell us the truth." The man clenched his fists, trembling with anger, then suddenly lashed out. "You don't know anything. Stop accusing me." His voice cracked, revealing cracks in his composure. The crowd held their breath. The girl hesitated, then whispered again, voice barely audible. "He's been hurting me for years. It's why I ran away. I thought no one would believe me." Her words hung heavy in the air, piercing through the silence like a knife. The woman's eyes widened in shock. "You knew. You saw. Why didn't you say something?" The girl looked down, trembling. "I was scared. I thought I'd get in more trouble." The man's face darkened, eyes flashing with anger and fear. "You don't understand," he hissed. "You don't know what's really happening." His voice quivered, betraying a side of him no one had seen before. "I'm not who you think I am." The crowd's whispers grew louder, suspicion turning into outrage. The woman stepped even closer, voice sharp. "What are you hiding? What's been going on?" The man's shoulders slumped, sweat pouring down his face. I didn't mean for it to happen," he muttered. "It's not what you think." His eyes darted around desperately, searching for an escape. The girl looked at him, tears streaming freely now, voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. "It's true," she whispered again, voice cracking. "He's been hurting me, for a long time." The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by her quiet confession. The woman's heart sank. She looked at the man, his facade cracking, his defenses crumbling. Every lie he'd told was unraveling. Every secret he'd hidden was surfacing. And in that moment, the truth seemed ready to explode, threatening to shatter everything they thought they knew. The crowd watched, breath held tight, waiting for the next revelation. The air grew thick with tension, the weight of secrets pressing down. The girl's trembling form, the man's nervous glance, the silence, everything pointed to a darkness that refused to stay buried. The story was far from over. The girl's trembling lips parted once more, her voice barely a whisper as tears welled in her eyes. "It was him," she murmured, voice cracking under the weight of her words. "It was my father." The crowd gasped collectively, the shock rippling through the group like a physical blow. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief, her breath catching in her throat. The man's face contorted with fury, then outright denial. "That's not true," he shouted, voice hoarse and desperate. "You're lying. She's lying." But the girl, trembling uncontrollably, pressed on. "No," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "It's true. I'm his daughter." Her voice cracked again, fragile and raw. "I never knew what to do. I thought maybe I was cursed. I thought I deserved it." She looked down, trembling, voice barely audible. "But I found out. I'm not just someone he hurt. I'm someone he's been hiding all along." The silence that followed was deafening, thick with shock and disbelief. The woman's hand flew to her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. Your daughter," she managed, voice trembling. The girl nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was alone. I thought no one would believe me. But I'm his daughter. And I've been suffering in silence." The man's eyes widened, then darkened with rage. "You're making this up," he spat. "This is a lie. A terrible lie." His voice cracked, but the guilt behind it was undeniable. His shoulders trembled, the mask of arrogance slipping away. "You don't understand," he yelled, voice trembling with fury and fear. "You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the truth." The crowd stared, rooted in shock, unable to speak. The girl's shoulders shook as she finally released her secret. I was just a child," she whispered. "He told me I was worthless. That I deserved nothing. I hid, I suffered, and I stayed silent because I thought I was cursed. But I'm not. I'm not his fault." Her voice broke into a sob, raw and heart-wrenching. "I'm his daughter," she repeated again, as if saying it aloud would make it real. The man's face twisted with rage, then with desperation. "You're lying," he spat again, voice rising. "You're trying to destroy me. I never hurt her. I was trying to protect her." But his trembling hands betrayed his words, trembling with guilt that he could no longer hide. The crowd looked at him, faces frozen in shock and horror. The woman's eyes filled with tears, her heart pounding painfully. "You've been hiding this all along," she said softly, voice trembling. "All these years, you've been hiding your cruelty. How could you? How could you lie about something so terrible?" The girl, shaking now, looked up at her. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid to speak. Afraid no one would believe me. But I can't keep it inside anymore." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's my father. And he's been hurting me. All this time." The atmosphere thickened with revelation, the weight of the truth sinking into everyone present. The man's facade crumbled completely, his shoulders hunched, eyes darting wildly. "You don't understand," he hissed, voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like. I did what I had to do." But his words sounded hollow, his guilt plain for all to see. The crowd stared, stunned into silence. The truth was out, raw and undeniable. The girl's trembling voice, her tears, her trembling shoulders, everything revealed a suffering she had kept hidden for years. The man's denial rang hollow now, his face a mask of guilt and fear. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of long-buried secrets. The scene froze, everyone watching, waiting for what would come next. The shocking revelation hanging in the air like a thundercloud, ready to burst. The man's face twisted with fury as rage overtook him. "You're lying. All of you, he shouted, voice cracking like a broken glass. This is a setup. A trap. His eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape, but no one moved. His fists clenched, trembling with adrenaline and desperation. I'm telling you the truth, he bellowed, voice rising. I never hurt her. Never. His words echoed through the tense silence, but they sounded hollow, strained by the guilt he desperately tried to deny. The girl, trembling and tear-streaked, clung to her words like a lifeline. It's true, she whispered, voice cracking. He did everything. I was just a child. I couldn't escape. I was too afraid. Her voice broke into sobs, but she kept speaking, voice trembling with raw honesty. I'm telling the truth now. Please believe me. Her hands shook, clutching her chest as if trying to hold herself together. The woman who had intervened stepped forward, voice steady and loud enough to cut through the chaos. Enough, she demanded, her voice firm and commanding. He's been lying all along. He's a monster, and he's been hiding it for years. Her eyes burned with anger and grief. You can't deny what's right in front of us now. The crowd gasped again, faces pale, breaths held tight. The air was thick with shock and fury, a storm ready to explode. Every eye was fixed on the scene, the man trembling with rage, the girl shattered but brave, the woman standing unwavering. The man's face contorted with rage. You don't know anything, he spat, voice rising into a scream. This is a lie. A conspiracy to ruin me. His voice cracked, and he lunged forward as if to flee, but the woman stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Her stance was unyielding. Justice won't let you run, she said coldly. You're done hiding. The truth is out now. He snarled, eyes blazing with madness. You think you can stop me? I'll make you regret this, he threatened, voice trembling with fury. I'll destroy you all. I'll make sure no one ever believes her. I'll make sure, but the woman cut him off with a sharp glare. No more lies, she said, voice unwavering. You're finished. The truth will come out, and you'll face what you've done. Her words echoed like a blow, loud and undeniable. The girl looked up, her trembling voice finally gaining strength. It's true, she said, voice trembling but clear. He's been hurting me. All these years. I was too scared to say anything. Now I'm brave enough to tell the truth. Tears streamed down her face, but her chin was raised. I don't want to hide anymore. The man's face twisted further, a mask of desperation and fury. You're all lying, he shouted, voice cracking. She's lying. I never touched her, never. His fists pounded against his sides, trembling with rage and guilt. You're framing me. I'm innocent. The crowd's gasps grew louder, some turning away, others frozen in shock. The tension was unbearable, like a storm on the verge of breaking. The woman's jaw clenched, her voice sharp and commanding. You're not going anywhere, she declared. You're going to answer for what you've done. Justice will be served. The man's eyes darted wildly, sweat pouring down his face. You're all crazy, he hissed, voice dripping with venom. You don't know the truth. I'll make you all pay. His voice cracked again, a final desperate attempt to cling to his lies. This isn't over. But the woman stepped closer, her face fierce. It is, she said coldly. And you'll pay for every moment of pain you caused. The silence thickened, the storm of revelations reaching its peak. Everyone stared, breathless, as the man's trembling finally betrayed him. His shoulders slumped, guilt washing over his face, eyes darting around in helpless defiance. The girl's trembling voice was the last thing heard before the storm of confrontation threatened to explode, an unspoken promise that this was only the beginning. The truth had shattered everything, and now, nothing could be the same. The man's face drained of color, his eyes darting wildly as his trembling voice faltered. I didn't mean to," he stammered, voice cracking under the weight of truth finally crashing down on him. The undeniable evidence lay before him, a torn piece of clothing from the girl's testimony, a witness's statement, a digital record of his own words caught on a nearby device. All of it painted a picture he could no longer deny. His lies, once so confident, crumbled like fragile glass, shattered by the relentless truth. People around him began to whisper, their voices rising in a tide of disgust and rejection. "It's him," someone muttered, voice trembling with anger. "He's the monster." Others nodded, turning their backs on him, faces pale but resolute. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of condemnation that pressed him into a corner. His fists clenched, but his grip was weak, trembling with helplessness. The woman who had stepped forward earlier now stood tall, her voice unwavering and commanding. "Enough," she declared, her tone echoing through the tense air. "Your lies are exposed. Your cruelty is undeniable. You're finished." Her eyes burned with righteous fury as she pointed a steady finger at him. "There's nowhere left to run." He tried to protest, voice trembling, "You don't understand," but the words died in his throat. His face turned ghostly pale, sweat pouring down his forehead as shame and rage battled within him. His jaw clenched tightly, but it was all a desperate act. His arrogance was slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of helplessness. The crowd's whispers turned into gasps as they saw him falter. A woman's voice, strong and clear, cut through the chaos. "It's over," she said firmly. "Your lies can't hide the truth anymore. The truth is out, and justice must be served." Her words resonated like a final blow, sealing his fate. He looked around desperately, eyes pleading for mercy, but none was forthcoming. His voice, once full of arrogance, now cracked and faltered. "I didn't, I swear," he stammered, but the words sounded hollow, and the crowd's rejection grew louder. The girl, trembling but beginning to stand taller, looked at him with a mixture of relief and newfound courage. Her voice, trembling at first, grew steadier. "It's true," she said softly but with conviction. "He hurt me. All those years. I was afraid, but I'm not anymore. I'm telling the truth now." Her voice carried hope, fragile but real. For the first time, a spark of light flickered in her eyes. The woman stepped closer, her stance firm. "You've lost everything," she said coldly. "Your lies, your cruelty, they're exposed. You're a coward hiding behind lies." Her voice echoed with finality. "There's no escape now." The man's shoulders slumped as the weight of defeat pressed down on him. His voice, weak and trembling, attempted one last plea. "Please," he begged, eyes pleading. "You don't understand. I was going through things," but the words sounded feeble, insignificant. The crowd's whispers turned into angry shouts, rejecting his excuses. No one believed him anymore. The air was thick with a mixture of relief and bitter justice. He tried to back away, but the woman stepped in front of him with unwavering resolve. "There's nowhere left to hide," she said, her tone final. "You're going to answer for what you've done." Her voice carried the strength of someone who refused to be silenced. He looked around, cornered, defeated, his face a mask of despair. His eyes flicked wildly, searching for an escape, but every exit was blocked by the silent, resolute crowd. His shoulders sagged further, and he finally fell silent, eyes lowered in shame. The victim, trembling but standing tall, stared at him with a quiet, newfound strength. The pain was still there, but hope flickered, faint but real. She looked at the woman who had defended her, gratitude and a spark of courage blooming within her. The storm had not fully passed, but the tide was turning. Justice had begun to crush the darkness. Yet, beneath it all, a faint whisper of longing for true healing remained, an ache waiting to be soothed. The girl's trembling shoulders finally relaxed as the weight of the truth settled over her. Tears streamed down her face, unrestrained and raw, as she looked into the face of the woman who had stood beside her all along. Her voice was fragile, barely a whisper, but filled with a depth of emotion that spoke of relief and exhaustion. "Thank you," she murmured, voice trembling. "Thank you for believing me. I thought no one would ever understand." Her hands shook as she reached out, clutching at the woman's arm as if to anchor herself to safety. It was as if, after years of silence and fear, she finally felt the warmth of genuine compassion wrapping around her. The woman knelt beside her, gently wiping away the tears with a soft cloth, her voice tender and reassuring. "You're safe now," she whispered. "No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." Her tone was firm, yet delicate, holding on to every ounce of trust she could offer. Around them, the crowd's whispers softened into a quiet, supportive hum. Faces once filled with suspicion now held expressions of sympathy and kindness. People moved closer, not to stare, but to offer warmth, the gentle touch of a hand, the comforting presence of someone nearby. The atmosphere shifted from cold accusation to a space of healing. The girl's trembling hands finally unclenched, and she leaned into the woman's embrace, seeking refuge in a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. Her sobs gradually subsided into quiet, shaky breaths. The ache she carried inside, the years of pain, shame, and fear, began to soften, replaced by a fragile hope. She looked up, eyes red and swollen, and managed to whisper, "I just want to be okay. I want to believe I can be safe." Her voice cracked with vulnerability, yet there was a flicker of strength in her words. Her voice, once full of despair, now carried a fragile but growing trust. The woman gently pressed her forehead against the girl's, offering a silent promise of protection. "You are not alone anymore," she said softly. "We will help you heal. And justice will be done." Her words carried the weight of conviction, a promise that no shadow from the past could darken her future. The crowd around them responded with quiet support, some nodding, others offering small, encouraging smiles. No one now looked at the girl with pity, only with respect and kindness. The girl's trembling hands clutched at her chest, as if trying to hold on to the newfound hope. She took a deep, shuddering breath, feeling the warmth of genuine compassion seep into her soul. For the first time in years, she felt the faint glow of trust, an ember flickering in the darkness. Tears welled again, but this time, they carried a different weight, relief, a faint spark of hope, the beginning of healing. She whispered softly, "I was so afraid no one would believe me. I was so scared I'd be alone forever." Her voice broke, but her eyes shone with a quiet resolve. "But now, I know I'm not. I'm not alone anymore." The woman cupped her face gently, wiping away the remaining tears with tender care. "Never again," she promised softly. "We will walk this path together. You can trust us." The girl nodded slowly, clutching her hands tightly. The heavy burden of her suffering was slowly lifting, replaced by a fragile sense of safety. She leaned into the woman's comforting embrace, feeling the steady heartbeat of someone who truly cared. Around them, the silence had turned into a gentle hum of support, an unspoken vow that she would be protected. In that quiet moment, the girl finally believed she could begin to heal. That she could find peace. That she could trust again. And as the crowd watched this fragile scene of compassion, a collective sense of relief washed over everyone. The storm of cruelty had passed. Justice was unfolding. And in the midst of it all, a young girl, once broken, now started to rebuild her hope. The girl looked around, her eyes glistening with quiet wonder as the first rays of dawn seeped into the sky. The darkness that had once shrouded her life was receding, replaced by a gentle light that seemed to warm her very soul. She was no longer trembling with fear but standing tall, held by the steady embrace of the woman who had become her guardian. The crowd around them had dispersed, leaving behind only a few lingering glances filled with hope and compassion. Everything felt different now, lighter, brighter. The weight of pain, of silent suffering, had begun to lift, replaced by a fragile but undeniable sense of belonging. The woman gently squeezed the girl's hand, her voice soft but firm. "You're safe now," she repeated, as if trying to convince both herself and her young charge. Justice has been done, and love will always find its way through the darkness. Her words carried a promise, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of kindness. The girl nodded slowly, her heart swelling with gratitude she could barely find words for. She had been so lost, so broken by the cruelty she had endured, but now she felt the gentle stirrings of hope, like a new dawn after a long, unending night. Around them, the world seemed to breathe easier. The air was filled with the quiet hum of renewal, the soft rustling of leaves celebrating the arrival of a new day. It was as if nature itself was whispering that suffering, no matter how deep, could be overcome by compassion and courage. The girl's eyes drifted to the horizon, where colors of pink and gold stretched across the sky, reminders that even after the darkest nights, the sun would rise again. The woman looked at her with a tender smile, her eyes shining with unwavering faith. "No one deserves to suffer in silence," she said gently. "Every voice matters, every truth deserves to be heard. Remember that. You are not alone anymore." Her words were like a balm, healing wounds that had festered in silence for too long. The girl's tears shimmered once more, but this time they were tears of relief, of liberation. She whispered softly, "Thank you," her voice filled with a quiet strength she was only beginning to realize was within her. The crowd support had faded into a warm memory, a testament to the simple yet profound truth that kindness can change lives. What had once seemed impossible, the triumph of justice, the healing of a broken spirit, was now a living reality. The girl took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs, and she knew her journey was just beginning. But she was no longer afraid. The woman reached out and gently brushed the girl's hair, her touch tender and reassuring. "You are worthy of love," she whispered. "You are deserving of happiness, of safety, of a future where you can grow without fear." Her words echoed in the girl's mind, a gentle reminder that even amid the worst suffering, hope and kindness could prevail. The girl looked into her protector's eyes and saw a reflection of everything good that still existed in the world. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over everything, the girl finally believed that her life could be different. That her voice mattered. That her story was no longer one of silence and pain, but of resilience and courage. She felt the strength of those who had stood with her, the quiet power of compassion that had shattered the darkness. And so, with a heart full of cautious hope, she stepped forward into the day. Free from fear, embraced by love, and carried by the simple truth that kindness, true, unwavering kindness, can change a life forever. That even in the darkest night, a new dawn will always come. And in that light, everyone has the power to heal, to forgive, and to believe again. The world was still turning, but now she knew she was part of it, no longer alone, no longer forgotten. And that, perhaps, was the greatest lesson of all, that compassion is the most enduring force, capable of transforming wounds into wisdom, darkness into dawn, despair into hope.